Welcome to the Broadway Almanac. I'm George Hardy, your host. Sweeney Todd is generally considered to be Stephen Sondheim's masterpiece. It was first mounted on Broadway in 1979, won a total of 8 Tony Awards, including Best New Musical, Best Score, and Best Book for a Musical. It's been revived many times on Broadway, most recently with Josh Groban as Sweeney and Annalee Ashford as Mrs. Lovett. It's been staged in concert halls, opera houses, and theaters all over the world. And believe it or not, Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street, is not about cannibalism. More about that a little later. What it is about is how the thirst for revenge can consume a person's soul. Now, why has this piece become so popular over the years? And what is it? Is it a musical? Is it an opera, a play with music, an operetta? Our composer Stephen J. Sondheim, in writing about the work, admits that when it's performed in an opera house, it walks and talks and sings like an opera. But when done in a Broadway house or other musical theater setting, it comes across as a musical. But Mr. Sondheim says that if you really insist on putting Sweeney Todd in a category, it is a horror movie for the stage. That's from page 332 of his Finishing the Hat. And that was the challenge, he said, to see if he could scare the wits out of an audience with a stage show, a musical thriller. As a teenager, Sondheim's first love wasn't the theater at all. It was the movies. All kinds of movies, and he became drawn to what music could do for telling a story. And he admits to modeling the music in Sweeney Todd on the film music of Bernard Herrmann, especially the Concerto Macabre written for the 1945 film Hanover Square. He saw the movie at the age of 15. He memorized the score, and the music stayed with him his whole life. It is among his earliest musical influences. And if you're interested, you can go to YouTube or Spotify and bring up Concerto Macabre from Hanover Square, and I think you'll hear the parallels between it and Sweeney Todd. Now, not that Sondheim ripped off any of Herrmann's melodies, no. It's about copying his style, the dark chords, the somber moods that made Bernard Herrmann the master. By the way, you might be more familiar with his music for Psycho, The Day the Earth Stood Still, Citizen Kane, or his last film score, Taxi Driver. Other influences in the piece include Maurice Ravel, Sergei Prokofiev, and Sondheim uses the ancient Dies Irae, the Day of Wrath, in the ballad that runs throughout the score, but it's heard in a melodic inversion. Stephen Sondheim was first drawn to Sweeney Todd in London in 1970 when he saw the stage play by Christopher Bond, which also included some well-known pub songs to help carry it along. And Bond borrowed that character from a series of Victorian penny dreadfuls from 1846 called The String of Pearls. Originally, though, Sweeney Todd was just your ordinary, frightening serial killer like Jack the Ripper. Bond, however, added the psychological backstory and motivation to Todd's crimes. He added Todd as the victim of the ruthless Judge Turpin, who exiled him to Australia and raped his young wife, driving her mad. So as the story unfolds, we find Sweeney Todd both perpetrator and victim. And this is what appealed to Stephen Sondheim. But producer and director Hal Prince was not keen on the idea of making Sweeney Todd into a musical theater piece with over 80% of the production set to music. That is until Prince took Sondheim's concept of a small horror piece for the stage and added the metaphor of the Industrial Revolution and an examination of the general human condition of those times. Now, what about all this cannibalism in Sweeney Todd? Well, it's done tastefully, isn't it? And it's the major source of comic relief in the piece. Mrs. Lovett and Sweeney turn into music hall characters as they go through A Little Priest. It's piccolo player. How can you tell? It's piping hot. So-called gallows humor, of course, but it's not what the whole piece is about. Yet even with the comic relief of A Little Priest, Hal Prince's metaphor of the Industrial Revolution is not lost. I mean, isn't the song about man devouring man? Stephen Sondheim believed that Sweeney Todd is a story of revenge and how it consumes a vengeful person. He asserted that the show is about obsession, not so much about the devilish crimes, but rather the emotional and psychological depths. And that's the source of the horror. And who doesn't love a good, scary story? Well, that's your Broadway Almanac. I'm George Harder. So long until next time.